How many times have I told you that change is the only constant in the universe? Today, we're going to discuss the impact of AI in your business. Welcome to the Human Resource.
Ooh, AI, a topic that we are hearing more and more and more. But the question was, do you know when they're using AI or if they're the real person? So, could you tell? Dave's laughing because we've been playing with this. That wasn't me, guys. That was not really me.
Yeah, Pandy, pretty wild, isn't it?
Dave Hatter's here with me, guys. If you don't remember Dave's earlier show, Dave Hatter is an absolute expert on cybersecurity and now a major authority on AI.
Super nerd, really. Yeah.
You did use that last time, I think.
Ultra geek, something like that. Tinfoil hat guy.
Dave is, anybody in Cincinnati, everybody in Cincinnati knows Dave Hatter, and he was the perfect person to have on the show today because this is becoming a real topic for business owners and HR people. How do we deal with this AI as people are starting to use it in the businesses and we don't even, as business owners, we don't even know it?
Well, I think that's an important point, Pandy. A lot of folks, because many of these tools are free, right? You can go sign up for a ChatGPT account at OpenAI or use X's Grok or Perplexity or Claude or, Microsoft 365 comes with Copilot now. So there's all these different options. And, most people, I would say, have good intentions. They discover these things and think, hey, I'm going to use this to be more productive. There is a lot of upside to it because I'm going to say a lot of negative things here today. There is a lot of upside, but you got to understand where it makes sense and where it doesn't. You got to know what it's good at and what it's not good at. And I think the most significant takeaway for me at this point is how this is fueling cybersecurity related attacks. As you mentioned, so the intro there was you. You and I got together very shortly before the show. I went out, did a search, found a free tool. In this case, we'll use something called Vocloner. Neither one of us had ever used it before. And in less than 15 minutes, you watched this. In less than 15 minutes, you read a statement. It recorded your voice, and we were able to generate that intro in less than 15 minutes with no previous skill, no previous experience with this site, and it was free. It literally cost us nothing to do this. And that's why I think it's so important for business owners and executives to understand these tools are increasingly being used in all kinds of different, scams and fraud and so forth, including you leave a message for you, the boss, leave a message for someone instructing them to do something, right? There's well-documented cases of millions of dollars in fraud. And this demonstrates just how easily accessible these tools are to the bad guys.
Well, and it was bad enough that we had to deal with the phishing emails and the non-vocal stuff. But when I saw how easy this could be done, this is very concerning.
I agree with you completely. Even on the text-based stuff. So if you use a tool like ChatGPT or any of these generative AI tools like Grok, right? Again, I can create a free account. And in the past, the tells for phishing, whether it was via email or text or whatever would be, well, the grammar's weird. It doesn't read quite right. A lot of times when you have non-English speaking people coming up with these scams, it's just not quite right. Well, now I can use a tool like ChatGPT. Again, there's a free version of it, and I can create perfect English prose all day long. I don't even need to speak English, So I can send emails that feel a lot more realistic. They don't have all those old school tells. And now you throw in this voice cloning aspect of it and possibly even creating, deep fake videos of someone. It really raises the bar. And I think every business needs to be training their employees about these attacks and to look out for it. My advice is, in addition to training, especially like at the executive level, and particularly where there are people who would have access to funds, you need to have serious discussions about this, and there needs to be a prearranged way to handle unusual requests, right? Because literally the CEO could call you on the phone, quote unquote, And using a tool like this, I'm having a conversation with you. You say something, I type in what I want to say back as the CEO, hit the button, and that's what it says. So there needs to be some sort of prearranged approach to dealing with something is not right here. How can I know for sure that I'm actually talking to the CEO or the CFO or whomever versus some sort of live voice cloning attack?
Well, so let's look. You're going, and I love it because you're going big picture. But my thought was, shouldn't companies even decide if they want AI used
Yes.
in their company to begin with?
Because people are going to, whether they stumble into it or they watch this podcast or they read about it online, they're going to say, hey, I hear all this upside to it. And again, there is an upside. I don't want to be totally negative here. And they're going to try this stuff. And when they do that, it's potentially exposing you and your business to all kinds of privacy and compliance issues above and beyond the cybersecurity aspects of this. So this is a multifaceted topic, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. Every business should have some sort of documented policy that says this is acceptable and only these things are acceptable, as opposed to people using these tools without any sort of understanding of the potential liabilities they create for you as a business.
Well, and it was interesting. I had a CPA firm call and say, "Oh, well, we're using it for our emails." I just came from a client who said, "Oh, well, I just tell what I want the content to be, and the AI just writes my emails for me." But are they to assume accuracy every single time? I mean, Dave, that's important.
You're making a very important point. All of these tools have their limitations. And, they're only, like anything related to a computer, garbage in, garbage out. These are all large language models. They've been trained off information they've scraped off the internet for the most part. Each one has its own algorithms. Each one has its own training set. That's why you can, in the business, it's called prompt engineering, right? It's similar to using a search engine, right? You go to Google, you type in what you want to find, you use ChatGPT or any of these tools, Copilot, you create a prompt. You give it, a sentence or a paragraph of what you want, and then it produces output based on the data it's been trained on. Okay, so it can only be as good as that data. And under the hood, it's mostly a statistical model. So to answer your question specifically, when people use these things and they don't understand that that model has limitations, and this is a well-documented thing in the business, they hallucinate. Most of these have a warning that you should check your content because they will often just make things up from whole cloth. And if you don't really at least have some knowledge of the domain about which you're prompting about, there's a good likelihood that you're going to get an answer that is completely false. And that's why my general advice to folks is do not use these tools without understanding these limitations, especially this hallucination aspect, because you may go out with something that is completely false.
Now, see, that just brings me right back to something I've been trying to say to the audience over and over again. Folks, if you are not well-versed in HR, if you've not established a solid foundation in HR, do not use these tools to fake it till you make it. I'm telling you, when Dave said that, I just got chills thinking, oh my gosh, some of our less experienced, some of our students in HR may start using these tools or this resource to start making disciplinary decisions and maybe even recruiting decisions. I
mean, I'm no lawyer, I'm a nerd, but I think you're making a really valid point that if you are using these things and you don't have a lot of experience around the law and HR or any topic, you're setting yourself and your company up for potential problems when you violate some sort of law because this thing created a policy and had something in it that you didn't understand was illegal. So again, these tools have their place, and they can be like rocket fuel from a productivity standpoint when you understand what they're good at and what they're not good at, and when you stay within those guardrails and are able to vet the output. But if you just go in and start typing in stuff and take whatever it gives you as if it's the gospel truth, you are literally speeding towards a cliff and you're headed into the abyss. It's going to go bad at some point. I think I mentioned before off the air, there was a case where, and this has been a couple of years ago, when this was all really fresh and people were all geeked up about ChatGPT, because that's gotten most of the press, some attorney used it to file briefs and it referenced cases that did not exist. When it went to court, they realized this thing was using cases as a precedence that didn't exist. And I don't think that guy got disbarred, but I mean, he was on the precipice of losing his law license over this. So again, it's super important for people to know what they're asking about and stay within those guardrails and check the output, frankly.
Well, something else that you and I had talked about earlier was you're the mayor of a local municipality, and you and your assistant have a password.
Yeah, this is so important, and it gets back to what we were saying with the voice cloning aspect. I encourage folks go out on there, and there's a well-documented case in Forbes with Ferrari, where the CFO of Ferrari got a message that led to a phone call from the CEO of Ferrari. And eventually the CEO was asking them to make some kind of very large financial transactions. The CFO was, these guys work together. They know each other personally. And it's documented in the article that the CFO said the fake voice of the CEO actually had a Southern Italian accent, just like the real person. I don't know what that means. I don't speak Italian. But I thought that was a really interesting point of the article, that they cloned his voice perfectly. And eventually the CFO said, something's not right here. So he asked the CEO about a book that he had recently recommended to him. And of course, the scammer did not know the answer to that. To your point, Mayor of Fort Wright, our city administrator and I have a prearranged phrase. We're the only two people in the world that know this phrase. So if she gets a call from me or a voicemail or whatever, instructing her to do something unusual, make a large financial transaction or something, all she has to do in this case is ask for that phrase. And when they don't know it, which they won't, then there's a strong indication something is wrong at that point. So this is the kind of conversation executives need to be having, especially with their financial people, to get in front of this. Because as crazy as this sounds, I mean, again, we cloned your voice in less than 15 minutes with a free tool.
Yes.
This is coming.
Do you think it would be a good idea? Now, this is just me right off the top of the head, but don't you think it'd be a good idea for the company to do the research and identify what AI products they will permit in the business versus the employees just going out and grabbing whatever they want? Absolutely.
I think every business should have an AI policy, and part of that policy should state these are the tools that are acceptable within our organization. Whether it's if you're on Microsoft 365, for the most part, you have access to Copilot. Now it's got all kinds of different licensing levels and so forth. So a lot of people will probably naturally gravitate to that. But it really is important to understand all these different models out there, and the fact that you might be putting sensitive data, trade secrets, information that's protected by laws like HIPAA or something, that the average employee is not thinking, okay, when I put this into this model, it's now part of their large language model and potentially exposed to other people. For a while, several large companies blocked these things entirely because they had people who, with good intentions, were trying to use these tools to be more productive, and they're putting trade secrets and things like that into the tool, which then potentially exposes it to anyone using the tool. So yes, you should have a policy, and part of that policy should state these are the acceptable tools.
Well, and a number of states have already stepped in and said AI is not to be permitted in any recruiting or employment decisions, which is I don't see that going away. I think the states are going to step up and start making some strong opinion on this. Well,
you have both bias in the algorithms, bias in the training data. So, I think, I always hate to be the doomsday guy, the guy that's saying, this is all bad, because it's not all bad, but it's all in its infancy. And like most technology in its infancy, it has a lot of bumps and potholes and so forth in it. And this can go really wrong in a lot of ways, especially if you don't have any sort of insight into how are people using it, are they using it in ways that not only protect the company's confidential information, are in compliance with the law, but aren't causing problems with people using it to go out and do things because they felt like, well, the computer told me this was okay. Well, it may not be okay, right? It could be completely false. Again, this idea of hallucinations. And people need to know all of these things and work within the guardrails if they're going to use these tools.
Well, and what concerns me is that people are hired saying that they have certain competencies and expertise, and then it turns out they're actually just using the AI products to be or to perform their work, and we're really paying people for the AI versus what we think they're doing. You're staying. Dave's coming back. I'm keeping him for another show. Stay with us next week. Come back because Dave's going to walk us through what does an AI policy need to have in it, and how, where do we start? How do we make effective so that we can live with this new technology, accept the change we can't necessarily control, and still be the best that we can possibly be. Thanks for listening. You've been listening to The Human Resource.